This section is going to focus on just the basics of introduction to what chemistry is, matter, the three forms of matter, and also getting into atoms versus elements. So first thing is, what is chemistry? Chemistry is the study of matter and the changes that it undergoes. So it involves looking into how different compounds are made or put together, but also seeing how those compounds can change through chemical reactions. So with matter, there are three different types of matter. I feel like this is probably not anything especially new for you, but there are solids, liquids, and gases. But matter itself is any substance that has mass and takes up space. With solids, it's pretty obvious that there is a mass and that there is a shape. Think about a table or a chair or anything that is solid. It has a very specific shape, has a very fixed volume, and it's typically hard in some form. Whereas liquids, we also are able to see liquids. They take on the shape of the container that they are put into. The atoms are a little bit more spread out, but they're not super far from each other. Liquids also do have a fixed volume. You can only put 16 ounces of water into a 16-ounce glass. Whereas gases are not rigid, they don't have a fixed shape, and they also don't have a fixed volume. This is where the atoms are the furthest apart from each other, and so they're able to spread themselves out, but we can also condense them and put them into smaller containers. So if you think of like an oxygen tank or a fire extinguisher, which has like a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher, it's full of gas that has been forced into that particular container. All forms of matter, whether solid, liquid, or gas, are made from atoms. Atoms are the building block of matter. Sometimes atoms can be found in their pure form, like here we have an example of copper piping, where it's a bunch of similar copper atoms all bonded together, so that would be a pure form of matter. Sometimes it's more complicated forms of matter, like here we have sugar, which is made from carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen that are all bonded together to make sucrose. Or it can be mixtures of compounds. So we have tea, so there's molecules that were found in the tea leaves as well as the water that the tea is steeped in. But in what it comes down to is that all matter is at the heart made from atoms. There are different parts of the atom. Every atom has three main parts: protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons are positively charged particles. So they're teeny tiny little particles that we can't see, but they have a positive electric charge. Think of like a magnet, how a magnet has a positive side and a negative side. So they are positively charged and they're located in the nucleus. The neutrons are also in the nucleus. They are the same size and mass as the proton. However, they have no charge. They are not electrically charged at all. And the neutrons kind of act like a buffer. As you can imagine, if you have a lot of positive things trying to be in one space, they're going to repel each other. So the protons, when they get close to each other, since they're both positive, are going to push away. So the neutrons act like a buffer to keep those protons from repelling each other. And again, they are both found only ever in the nucleus, and it is the protons and the neutrons that actually give mass to an atom. The third part of the atom is the electron. They are much, much smaller than the protons and protons and neutrons, sorry. And they are located outside, surrounding the nucleus, and they're moving around the nucleus in what we'll sometimes call orbits, but in reality are what we will be calling electron shells or electron energy levels. So they are outside of the nucleus. They do not go into the nucleus. They always remain outside, moving around that part of the atom. And electrons are negatively charged. So while the protons are positively charged, the electrons are negatively charged. Atoms themselves are completely neutral. So even though the protons have a positive charge and the electrons have a negative charge, the number of protons an atom has is exactly equal to the number of electrons that atom will have. And so if I have 3 positive charges and 3 negative charges, overall, as a whole, the atom is neutral. It has no charge whatsoever. So what's the difference between an atom and an element? Well, atoms are what make up matter. Elements are the type of atom you can have. Every atom is unique in that it has a specific number of protons, and it is that number of protons that will determine what type of element you have. So if you have an element that has 6 protons, no matter what, it will be carbon. If it has 7 protons, it will be nitrogen. And we're going to learn a little bit later about how the number of electrons and the number of neutrons do not change what element you have. Only protons change the element. So one way to think of elements versus atoms is to think of a box of crayons. You can have a box of crayons of 24 crayons. All 24 are crayons, okay? However, you have different color crayons. So you could have a blue crayon or a red crayon or a yellow crayon. That is similar to how I want you guys to think about atoms and elements. All matter is made from atoms. Everything is some form of atom, but we have different types of atoms. So we have boron atoms and carbon atoms and nitrogen atoms. So just like crayons can have colors, atoms are a type of element. It kind of categorizes them. And again, it is the number of protons that is going to determine what type of element you have.